In 2001, a popular frozen yogurt shop in Austin, Texas was robbed. 2 employees were shot to death. The case went cold for almost 2 decades until new evidence emerged and police were able to finally make an arrest. So let's talk about this case. On December 3, 2001, around 9:30 p.m., 2 men entered the yogurt shop at 1620 West 6th Street in Austin, Texas. This was a popular frozen yogurt shop with an attached smoothie bar and a little cafe area where you could sit and enjoy your food or drinks. Surveillance footage shows one of the men pulling a silver revolver and pointing it at the employees while the second man emptied out the cash register. The men then tied up the employees and customers and forced them all into a back room. At some point during this time, the gunman shot and killed 2 of the employees. Their names were Jennifer Harbison and Amy Ayers. Then the gunman released everyone else and fled the scene. When officers arrived, they found Jennifer and Amy lying on the floor face down with gunshot wounds to the back of their heads. Both women had been shot at close range. An autopsy would later reveal that Amy died instantly from her gunshot wound, but Jennifer was still alive when the paramedics arrived. She was rushed to the hospital where she underwent emergency surgery, but she never regained consciousness and she died 2 days later. The first man was described as being between 5 feet 8 inches and 5 feet 10 inches tall, medium build, wearing a white shirt, black pants, and a black cowboy hat. The second man was described as being between 5 feet 11 inches and 6 feet 1 inch tall, slim build, wearing a blue shirt and a white baseball cap with the letter on it. This detail didn't help investigators at the time narrow down any suspects, but it does stand out to me now. Anyway, after this incident, the owner of the yogurt shop offered a $20,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the people responsible. And even though this was a popular case, one that generated tons of media coverage, leads poured in, nothing ever really panned out. There were quite a few theories regarding who could have committed this crime, but without any solid evidence, nothing came of it. And now here we are over 20 years later, and we still don't have any answers. But maybe that's about to change because in July of 2021, police announced that they had made an arrest in this case. They arrested a man named Edward Harold Belfield III. He was charged with 2 counts of murder and 1 count of robbery. According to police, this 60-year-old handyman had just been released from prison earlier this year after serving 20 years for an unrelated offense. But what led them to him now? Well, according to the Austin Police Department, this case went cold for almost 20 years until advancements in forensic technology allowed investigators to generate a partial DNA profile of the gunman. Using this DNA profile, the department says they were able to link Edward to the crime. Unfortunately, they did not elaborate on how they linked him, but they did say that the evidence against him was strong enough for them to secure an indictment from a grand jury. But unfortunately, Edward took his own life before he could be arrested. After receiving this news, his family released a statement which read, "We, the family of Edward Belfield, are shocked and deeply saddened by the news of the indictment and the tragic loss of life that occurred at the yogurt shop in 2001. Our deepest sympathies are with the families and friends of the victims involved in this crime. Although a grand jury has issued an indictment, Edward's passing prevents us from being able to mount a defense or obtain any further information about the evidence against him. We will continue to grieve the loss of our loved one and respect the privacy of all those affected by this crime." Okay, this one makes sense to me. When someone dies by suicide, especially when they're facing serious allegations, people tend to automatically assume that means they're guilty. Like if they weren't guilty, why would they take their own life? But think about it like this. Would you rather live behind bars for the rest of your life knowing what you're innocent? Or would you rather die by suicide and take the secret with you? Because that's what I would do. I mean, personally, I can't speak for anyone else, but I feel like if I was innocent, I would want to prove it. Like I wouldn't want to spend the rest of my life trying to convince people I didn't do something I didn't do. It just doesn't sound worth it. You know what I mean. Anyway, I hope these families can find peace because this case is horrible. This is definitely one of those cases where the employees knew they were going to die. Like, You can tell by the way they tied up all the customers and then led them into the back room. It seemed like they wanted them to witness what was about to happen to the employees. You know, they probably wanted them to see that they had no other choice but to comply. And based on the surveillance footage, this was a very quick event. Everything happened really fast, so I can only imagine how traumatizing this would have been for those customers. I also want to point out that at the time of this incident, there was no DNA evidence linking the men to the scene, which may explain why this case remained unsolved for so long. Also, I think a big reason this case stayed in the public spotlight for all these years is because of the employees. They were very well liked. In fact, Jennifer was described as being a genuinely nice person who always wore a smile. And Amy, she was known for being a free spirit who loved traveling. Their co-workers described them as being loving, caring individuals who never deserved this. So, who do you think did this? You know, I doubt we'll ever know for sure now. Like, I honestly don't think Edward was working alone. Like, it just seems like something a serial killer would do. But this is just a theory. Like, I have no proof. I'm just saying. Also, how crazy is it that after all these years, this was the evidence that finally gave them a lead, the DNA evidence. We literally created an entire database of convicted felons based on the fact that they refused to submit their DNA. Like, if more people would have submitted their DNA, we might have caught this guy decades ago. But what do you think? Do you agree? Should everyone submit their DNA? Or do you think this is a violation of civil rights? Let me know in the comments. Also, recently the police commissioner said that this case is still officially a double homicide investigation. He said that even though Edward took his own life, they are still looking for any additional information. They're still trying to figure out if he acted alone or if there were other people involved. As always, I want to thank you guys for watching. I hope you learned something new today. I appreciate all of your support. I'll see you soon.